Welcome to the free lunch. As one year closes and another begins, many people find themselves standing at a crossroads. You might be asking yourself some hard questions. Should I stay where I am or take a risk? Is it time to change countries, change careers, or build something of my own? Do I double down or do I walk away? Do I chase stability or responsibility? Most people think about these questions, very few act on them. Today's conversation is with Carlos Ross, James Ross, and Gregory Botanes, three people in their mid-20s who did act. They left comfort, they left certainty, they moved countries, they took on responsibility for teams, for companies, and for outcomes. Gregory Botanes walked away from a secure career to build his own business. Carlos Ross stepped into leadership, helping launch and grow a global brand in Spain. James Ross crossed continents to break into a new industry, navigating emerging markets across Latin America. No shortcuts, no guarantees, no safety net. Just decisions and the willingness to live with the consequences. This episode is about ambition without illusion, about discipline over motivation, about building a life deliberately when no one is telling you what to do next. If you're starting this new year asking, what now? This conversation might help you find some answers. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Welcome to this very special New Year edition of the Free Lunch Podcast. A new year starting, a year just past, 2025 now coming to an end. And we thought it would be a great moment to reflect on what's happened over the last year as we kick off into a new one full of exciting and challenging new things. So today I'm joined by three people who've had pretty interesting and exciting years. Gregory Botanes, Carlos Ross, and James Ross. Do you prefer James or Jimmy?
Both work.
Okay.
Not James.
I think I'll call you James today. So so I tell you what, why don't we go back a year? So let's go back to December 2024 and think where each of you were, because you've all done an awful lot in the last year, and I'm really interested to find out about that. You've all done slightly different things, although you have some things in common, which I think will come out as we chat. So, Greg, I'm going to start with you. Where were you a year ago? What were you thinking about then? What's happened since then? What have been the highlights?
What a great question, Eddie. Well, first of all, thank you for this opportunity. It's a pleasure to be here and with these lads. So answering to your question, a year ago, I was in the UK. I was working for an agency based in Brighton, and I have to say I was extremely happy at the place. Co-workers were extremely good with me. The work was motivating. I was being promoted, so in a good place. But I knew something wasn't right. I wanted to do something different, to start my own thing, which we'll discuss in a few minutes. But yeah, I was living in England with my girlfriend, and working in a 9-to-5 job, basically.
Mm-hmm. Okay, with an itch to start your own thing.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. What was your primary motivator behind that, do you think?
Oof, that's a good question. I guess I always knew I wanted to do my own stuff. I started business with Jimmy like 5 years before that, Football League. So I think I've been always, wanting to do extra stuff. And I just knew that, I needed that experience in an agency. I needed that, how business works from the inside, how to do the technical work, for me to then start my own thing. I think you're never ready to start your own thing. You just need to do it. But yeah, I wanted to start something, and that's why I was doing my 9 to 5. But then 5 to 9, I was working like a maniac to build my own business, basically.
Okay, amazing. All right, well, let's go to Jimmy next. Jimmy, did I say I was going to call you James? It looks like I'm calling you Jimmy.
I think Jimmy is perfectly valid.
Well, he just called you Jimmy as
You
well. so-
decide.
Looks
You
like
decided the name.
Jimmy is his. He is a great lad who we don't know really what to call him, but.
But he's a great lad.
So, Jimmy, where were you a year ago, and what's happened to you?
A year ago today, I had just finished 8 months of half traveling, half exploring Asia, and in a lot of different ways, let's say. And I had already planned that I was gonna, on the 12th of February, I was gonna fly to Argentina
Mm-hmm.
to break into a branch of crypto called Stablecoins in Latin America as a whole, but Argentina specifically. So it was starting the transition period.
Yeah. So what you've been traveling around Asia, visiting different countries, and if you think about it, you'd been visiting different countries. What made you decide to visit stablecoins?
Yes. There's quite a lot of parts. At first I was traveling Asia completely like hippie, traveling no responsibility, let's say, only editing videos. But you end up realizing that if you want to keep on moving, you need to find a way to make it sustainable. So the exploration turned more towards, okay, what is out here in the business sense? And I had been meeting some people that they were talking about certain areas of crypto. And back then it was all about intuition, like what is interesting, what catches my attention. So these subjects became interesting, and I started to get involved in certain, let's say, paths interesting people were discussing. And when very high quality people are talking about a subject that no one knows about back home, let's say, you have to listen. And they were talking about a certain branch of crypto called stablecoins. It had grown a lot, but not even close to what it was going to in a year. And I realized that because I was Spanish and because I had no attachments to anything in Asia, I needed to do the same, but in Argentina.
Okay, brilliant. If you're enjoying this conversation, please subscribe and like the video. All right, let's turn to Carlos. Where were you a year ago, Carlos?
Well, a year ago, I was in Brighton. I was also working in an advertising agency, and I was in a very similar situation to Greg, actually. I've been working there for 3 years, just a bit over 3 years at that stage, and I was thoroughly enjoying my job. I have to say it was a good job. My life was good, and I had structure, but something was missing. I was eager to return home. I've been living outside of Spain for over 8 years, in Singapore and in the UK. And I really wanted to go back and rekindle those strong bonds I had with my family and continue my professional life in Spain. So where was I a year ago? I was looking for a job thoroughly. At the time I was in Spain, I was doing interviews, talking to a lot of people, trying to expand that area of interest in Madrid. But it was very challenging. It was very challenging because I would talk to very interesting, very powerful people, but it was difficult to get things moving and actually get more substantial results out of it. The Spanish market is in a difficult place, especially for advertising and marketing. And it was quite challenging and demoralizing when you're applying to stuff and the conditions are not at all what you expected. So it was a complicated point for my life.
Did you find there was a salary disparity?
Yes, there was a substantial salary disparity. That was the biggest challenge. But I'm grateful that I didn't rush into it in the sense of, jump at the first opportunity, because UK wasn't pushing me out. It was Spain that was pulling me in. So I waited and I waited to find that good opportunity, and well, the opportunity arose and I took the chance. So we'll talk about it now, I guess.
Okay.
But yeah.
Amazing. So we got 3 people. You all have certain things in common, which is that you're all essentially from Spain. You all, at this particular moment, none of you were actually in Spain. Jimmy, you were in Asia, you two were in UK, and you all had ambitions to do something. And I just wanted to mention as well that you're all a very similar age. So you are kind of turn of the millennium babies, around that turn of the millennium that you were all born. So I think that makes you Generation Z or Z,
The
depending on
early
where you come
ones.
from. What's that?
The early part of the.
We're in the border.
Whatever that means. I don't know what that means, but so I just think that it's important that to set that up then, because we're now kind of, okay, everybody has an ambition for the year ahead, and they're all quite stretching, quite challenging. It would have been possible just to kind of sit back. Jimmy, you could have gone around the corner to a bar in Thailand and just had another beer, and you could have just said, hey, you know, I'm all right here in Brighton, and you could have done the same, and you were all pretty settled. So what happened? Why don't we go back to you, Greg?
It's a very good question, Eddie.
Well, actually, it's not a very good question because you must know the answer.
Yeah, well, I think like Carlos mentioned, I also had this component of Spain pulling me in. I arrived to the UK when I was 18. So I spent around 7 years in the UK, and obviously I'm extremely grateful to the country. I've learned a lot, met wonderful people. But I you know, back in January, but well, I think this feeling was 2 years ago, more or less, but I was starting to feel like I needed to go back. I'm an extremely like family person. I really love my family. And I love Spain. Like Spain has its things like, you know, well, complicated topics and politics and stuff. But for me, it's one of the best countries in the world in terms of quality of life, in terms of values, culture. I think it's unbeatable. So I was in a very difficult place mentally because I knew I wanted to start my own thing. But going back to the not good things about Spain, we arrived to the tax section. So I was back in January thinking, all right, so I have this job. My girlfriend is with me in London. You know, I'm getting promoted. It's like the dream life. I'm living in a very good place, good salary, everything. But I didn't feel fulfilled. It was a weird feeling of, I know this is not my place. I know I need to do something different. So I need something that needed to change. And I, like, literally, if someone told me back in January I was going to be in this situation right now, I couldn't believe it. Like, I wouldn't believe it. Like, impossible. So, yeah.
You took the leap.
Yeah.
Which month did you come back here?
So August.
August.
So yeah. So 4 months ago. So it was 8 months of trial and error, trying different things, working like a demon. Like,
I can give testimonial this because Greg's and I lived as
true.
housemates for around 2 or 3 months before I moved back, and the amount of work this guy puts in is insanity.
Say likewise. Yeah, and we can speak about the importance of having male friends and living with you know, people that push you, because it's very different if you live with people that, you know, don't motivate you to be better. To, you know, like I was living with Carlos and with my co-founder Tommy, and you know, every day was war. Like,
Carlos is a sergeant.
like
So I think this is a really interesting point for anyone listening, that surround yourself with people that are going to push you.
100%.
If you surround yourself with people that are kind of all very happy and relaxed and say, hey, let's watch a movie, maybe you're not going to make these leaps.
Totally true. I mean, I think there has to be balance, but I think there's times where you have to just, you know, the the balance, you can leave it for later, you know, like for 2 months later. I think there's times where you have to just, you know, work, and if you, hard things, if you want to achieve, good things, you need to work for them. They're not gonna come by just sitting there and like, you need to do action plan, and just
And doing it together is so much easier. We would
100%.
we wouldn't go out partying, doing anything. We would go to sleep early, get up early in the morning on a Saturday, go to the gym, and then work all afternoon. And then we would have a bit of time to relax and watch a film together. Just finding that balance is absolutely essential.
We were so happy. Like,
Yeah.
like our Friday plan was literally working and cooking broccoli. That was, and we were
Great
the
plan.
happiest
Yeah,
kiddos.
we were so happy.
And there's moments in life where you have to do that, and it all depends on your mentality and your goals. Obviously, someone that wants to, be partying, and that's totally respectable and good for them, and they're gonna be happy doing that, But for me, I saw it as something that wasn't gonna add me, to my life. So I was like, all right, no partying, no alcohol, no nothing. Just work towards this goal, which was, setting my own business, starting my own thing, being my own boss, and just having full control of what I was doing. So yeah,
I would like to add as well, because I think it's important to clarify when we say no partying and stuff. We still did socialize and see people and interact with people, but the difference was, it wasn't because we didn't know what to do, so we just wanted to socialize, and because of like social norms. We would always make sure that it was for an occasion that we like truly deserved, or that was worth our
sacrifice.
effort for it.
yeah.
Because it is also very important to keep those social bonds between people.
We're social creatures, and it's so important to socialize. And you have to be careful when we are in this dynamic of working, of grinding, of waking
Monk mode.
monk mode. You have to be careful because we are social creatures, and I've noticed this. Like when we arrived back for Q4 to Madrid, we accomplished our goal, which was to come back to Spain. Life here is quite social. Paddle, like parties, like no, we can talk about that later, but like it was complete different scenario to the one we had in Brighton, because in Brighton, like we had our friends, but at the end of the day we were three of us, and like we had everything like organized and structured to put as much friction to not go out.
Yeah.
Here you have the good weather, the terraces, you have the a lot of stuff that is very tempting to go out, and like so you have to be be conscious and mindful and say, hey, this day Friday I'm gonna go out, and the other 4 days I'm gonna work, because if not I'm not gonna achieve the objectives. But
it makes sense, Greg, if you think about it. You just mentioned that Spain's one of the best places in the world to live, in your opinion. I also think that, because I moved here 35 years ago and still here. But of course, one of the reasons, or various reasons for that, might be great food, great weather, great things to do, great people. So they're all distractions to this very focused ambition, which is to make things happen. And just before I move on to the other two, I'm going to mention my own journey of 1 year ago, because it's actually relevant, I think, because what you've just been talking about is there's no such thing as a free lunch, which is essentially the title of my book in slightly different words, that came out just about 1 year ago.
great book, by the way.
Very good.
To recommend it.
But the point being that I believe very strongly that if you really want something in life, you are going to have to work for it. And yeah, sure, we need a bit of luck, things happen, but it's essentially down to that. So it's about finding that balance between really working hard, really being focused, really knowing what you want, but at the same time remembering that we're still human beings, and that we're not machines. And if we only do one thing, we become boring very quickly. And equally, by the way, and I'll just mention this, that because all of you have been instrumental for me in this, that 1 year ago I had not done one single episode of the Free Lunch podcast. I think we're about episode 20 with this New Year special, and it's been a fantastic journey for me. So you're never too old to try new things as well. So that's not probably the right message for this discussion, which is all about being a Generation Z or Z, but nevertheless, it's there's something in it.
Yeah, 100%. To add to, I mean, I can tell my part if you want now,
Yeah, I'd love you to.
because I think it comes in quite nicely to Greg's story. Is when the year progressed, I was looking for a job and I was struggling, as I said earlier. An opportunity arose with Krispy Kreme Spain, which is what I'm currently working at, and I when I had my interview, my second interview with what is now my boss, I had 2 days difference between the first and the second one. And I had tonsillitis at the time, so I was struggling quite a lot. And I was like, okay, I thought I had quite a lot of practice. I'd done a lot of interviews and I like doing presentations with what I would do for a brand launch, etc. So I said, I'm going to make a presentation. And I was like, oof, I don't have time. And, Greg gave me a page out of his book and said, always over deliver, always over deliver. And, I spent the whole day like until really late at night preparing the slide deck. I made a 25 or 30 slide presentation of how to launch Krispy Kreme in Spain according to marketing. And when I had my interview with my boss, he later told me that he never in his life, and he's done hundreds, probably even thousands of interviews, he's never seen someone appear in an interview with a massive presentation, and I think that gave me the edge above everyone else. So, my message is, if there's people that are struggling and are thinking, oh, I don't really like my job and I can't find an interview, like, oh, I'm struggling with interviews, is now, for example, I'm taking part in the interview process for hiring people for my team. There's so many people, there's so much like demand, there's so much competition around. You need to stand out, and that only way of standing out is by being perfect on everything you do when you're doing these interview processes. Like, if someone is a bit off when they're emailing you or whatever, that's already a bad sign. You have to be perfect, and when you interview them, you need to really stand out and impress. So over deliver. Don't go out that weekend, work, and if you want to get that objective, you need to like put that energy into it. So that was a big learning for me.
Yeah, I think if you really want something, a great question to ask yourself is there anything more I can do? So if you get to that interview and there was some extra bit of preparation you could have done, and how you turn up, right? I mean, if you want to be as well prepared as you can be.
And linking it to, like, I think especially for the interviews and even for like when you have calls with clients or with potential new clients, the me-pithy concept you mentioned on your book, it's so important.
So go on then, Greg. What is me-pithy?
Well, me-pithy is how you present yourself to the world, basically, is the impression you make to others. I highly recommend you read Eddie's book because it's I don't want to do blasphemy, but I usually like it's the Bible, and it's helped me a lot, and I really mean it for business and for for life. And there's a lot of key concepts there which are incredibly useful. So me-pithy, when you're doing interviews, when you are talking to a client in person, online, it's so important.
The impact you have on others. So when others see you, what do they see? That's definitely something worth thinking about. And it's linked to this idea of self-leadership, which I think all of you have demonstrated an enormous amount this year. So let's just go back to Carlos for a second. So you applied for the job at Krispy Kreme's. Just tell us really quickly in like one sentence, what is Krispy Kreme's?
So Krispy Kreme is a donut company. It's
not just a donut company.
It's the company.
We sell happiness and experiences and joyful occasions for the family and for everyone together. So it's a very, very old company from 1937, founded in North Carolina, and you've probably seen it in New York and around the world. In the UK, it's a very established company, but it didn't exist in Spain until this October when we launched it. So I was hired in June and we launched in October. So I was part of the process of launching it, and we opened our first shop a few months ago. And it's a great concept, really. We have what we call the theater. So in this shop, you have the machine, and you can see how all the Krispy Kremes come out slowly, and you can see them go through the fountain of glaze. And it's truly incredible. It's a very, very cool company, and the product is spectacular. Right?
Well, so many Krispy Kremes can you make in a day in the theater?
That machine on full capacity can pump out around 50,000.
Wow, that's a lot of donuts.
Yeah, and the opening was crazy. We gave out 27,000 half dozens to the whole of Madrid, all for free. So we go to universities and appear with the trolleys full of boxes and give them out, and people go crazy. I remember going around the university afterwards with a T-shirt, and people would stop me. It's like, where are the crispy? Give me, and I'm like, and we literally had to take change our clothes because we would be attacked. Everyone wants Krispies, and And then we did a very powerful brand play, and we invited over 40 influencers, all completely organically, which is very rare because people love the brand. People have a big love and passion for this brand. And then we had some pretty substantial prizes. So we had people camping for the grand opening, which is quite rare in a country like Spain where people don't really do that. But we had the first guy coming up at 12 midday the day before, so 20 hours more or less before we opened. And then by 6 p.m. we had around 15 people. And then I left at around 1:30 at night, and there was around like 100 people then. And in the end, there was around 300. And we had queues of over 700 people probably. And it's been absolutely spectacular.
And you in the Krispy Kreme organization, your job is?
So I'm the brand manager. So I'm in charge of the marketing. My boss, he's the CEO/CMO. So I report to him. And we work together with my art director in my team, and we do all the marketing side of things.
Amazing. So before we get to Jimmy, over here we have wanting to set up your own business in UK, moving back to Spain, setting up your own business. Here we have somebody who was working in the agency sector who's changed into the client side and taken on more responsibility, kind of a new thing, and into a completely new sector, which is food, which I don't think you've done anything like that before, and moved back to Spain. So we've got two people who've moved countries. So that's pretty impressive. So let's go to Jimmy. So you're now mid-air on your way to Argentina, February last year. When you landed there, how did you feel?
It was strange feeling because I had no idea where it was going to go. I did have the objective of the stablecoins. So I did have the goal quite clear. I think it was a similar mindset to when I started looking into crypto, let's say. When I was in Bali, when I arrived to Indonesia, when I kind of said, okay, I'm going to start doing the more business side of traveling, I met a guy. I was in a co-working, and I was thinking, okay, I'm going to start, what is this digital nomad thing, tech? I need to start working on something, but there's so much that I can look into. I have to go into something. So I went up to the guy. I saw a leaflet that was a talk, and it was a talk the next day, and I saw the guy was at the other side of the room in the co-working. So I thought, damn, he's probably a good person to ask. What advice could he give someone who's looking into a new world of this digital nomad? So I went up to him and I said, hey, Ian, he was called. Do you have any advice for me? Like, I'm just starting out in this tech world. I'm trying to pivot career or life, basically. And he said two things, which were eyes open. So he literally told me, eyes open everywhere. Opportunities are everywhere. But you have to be attentive when they come, And second, what you just did right now, which is go up to someone you don't know who you think can give you some valuable advice. Do that 10,000 times, and each conversation is going to get you to the next one. So going back to Argentina, that was my objective. It was like a strategy in the chaos, let's say. I knew where I wanted to get there, but I didn't know how I was going to get there. So it was...
Sorry, I'm just summing up for people listening.
Yes.
I think the two things you just mentioned are bravery and tenacity. So bravery to walk up to people that you've no idea who they are, but they look like they might be able to help or might be interesting, and ask them things. And tenacity was just to keep on doing that.
Yes, precisely.
Also, used to that because I think maybe you're going to mention it now, that people are usually scared to go up to someone and ask for advice. But what most people don't know is that people love to give advice, right? And you can expand on that because that advice you gave it to me.
That is key. asking for advice is something you can do a million times, infinite times. You're always going to get something in return. And then at some point, you have to start figuring out, okay, when I need to ask for specific things, when this person, but the eyes open thing, what you were saying about the importance of connecting those two is that when you go up to someone and you ask for advice, maybe they give you 5 pieces of advice, of which some start to give you an idea of what this person also needs. So maybe they are an investor and this person is actually looking to meet companies. So you ask the advice to the founder of the company and you kind of understand that he needs to meet investors. So that's when you start to connect the dots.
Well, I just like to interrupt with something because there's actually something else in my book. I don't want to plug the book yet again. The Free Lunch by Eddie Ross. But I think there is something to be very much to be said for the idea, and I call it playing the ego card, which is that when you ask somebody for advice, if you make it all about you, then actually it's quite boring for the people. So, hey, Mr. Person, Mrs. Person, I think you can help me. So therefore, I'm asking you this, this, and this. But if you say to somebody, I identify you as a person who knows a lot, who has extraordinary experience, great contacts, I'd love to get some of that and to hear you talking, right? I mean, obviously I'm exaggerating, but I think there's something to be said for it. And you take it to the next step, which I love, which is actually what could you do for that person? So that clearly you want something for them, but maybe you can do something for them too, even if it's something minor. Even if it is just making them feel that they have something to bring to the world. So I think that's all really worth thinking about when you're out there looking for stuff. Make sure you also make it about the person you're asking it.
I would say,
I was just going to say the line of make it about them. I've told you, I've used it a million times and it's so valuable. Just which is again empathy. It's like, what do you have to tell this person in order for them to feel mostly like that they want to help you?
And out of curiosity, like, because I guess you've done it hundreds of times, to ask for advice. What is your success rate in terms of like, has there any been anyone that said, hey, I don't want to give you advice, or like get out of here?
It usually success rate. I'm less of the numbers as you.
Well, no. In terms
as
of like
analytics, no,
it's very rare, right? That they say.
See, it's very rare that this person gives you a very important piece of advice that changes everything. But they're always gonna. So I think if you ask for advice, you sometimes get a favor, And whereas if you ask for a favor, they will probably give you some advice. It's like, okay, this person just move.
And the advice might be, don't ask me.
Yeah, the advice might be like, yeah, maybe you should read a bit more, something like that. But I think the success rate, which is very connected to what you two do, is also that it wasn't only face to face. That is obviously, you can't ghost a face to face interaction, so they are gonna respond. But it's the social media, LinkedIn specifically. And I started to research in stablecoins and post what I believe to be valuable content to LinkedIn. And from there, I started to connect with very important people.
So, and interrupt me if you think I'm going like into too much info here, but so you were doing those posts on LinkedIn, so adding value to your potential viewers or people you knew back then that wanted to read that stuff, and then you were like basically doing cold outreach to them. So they reacted to your post, and then you were, hey man, I saw you liked my post. Do you want something like that?
See, so connected to what we were talking about first, that Carlos was saying about over delivering, I would add another perspective to that, which is that if the interviewer doesn't know who you are when he's reading the CV, you're doing it wrong. Like that, you can't cold outreach a guy from an interview. And what I mean by that is that I had like a list of companies that I would apply to, and the 1, 2, or 3 posts that I did would kind of indirectly connect me to them. So I would put a list of, these are cross-border companies in stablecoins that are doing really good in Argentina. And I would list them, and then maybe the CMO would say, hey, thanks for the mention. And then I would connect with them, and then they would see my name in the CV. And mostly it didn't work, but so it advances.
Right, you just got to keep.
You have to keep it.
And I think the other thing that is so worthwhile is doing, and it goes back to Carlos's point about over delivering, is get prepared when you are going to have a conversation with somebody who might do something for you, because just the fact that you were able to say, oh, I noticed that you lived in Spain for 2 years, and then immediately that with that one comment, that person knows that you've done some research on them, and you don't need to sort of pass an exam in their career history, but it's just a little demonstration that you prepared for the conversation with them. And once again, it's about them. You've shown some interest in them, haven't just turned up hoping they can do something for you.
I would like to add as well to what we mentioned about playing the ego card and, building, using the ego card to people to give you advice and to help you. I think is not only applicable to sales, but also within a corporation.
Mm-hmm.
So in the agency I was in, there's a lot of people, and I always made sure to try and build very strong bonds with different people, genuine bonds, because but also it will help me and benefit me in the future for making better business and helping my personal progression.
Right.
And I think it's super important to not disappear, and I think it's super isolate because you don't want to socialize. I think it's super important to use those ego cards and make people feel important. And then they will like you more. And then in the moment of need, if you're in struggle and if you're in a tough moment, they will probably help you. If you're nobody to them, they won't help you.
And I personally think that's a very natural thing. And I once had somebody with faith. I once had somebody say to me that they thought empathy sounded a bit manipulative, or the ego card, the idea that you only are nice to people because you want something back. And I would argue that there's an element, being honest, there's an element of truth in that, which is that we are all out there building relationships and doing things and making people feel good, in part because we want to do that, and that's a good way to be, and in part because we're kind of future-proofing for when we need something. I don't think there's anything unnatural.
It's a win-win situation. Like, it's not like, the other person is going to win as well. Like,
yeah. All right, amazing. So Jimmy, you are now in Argentina, and you were pretty much alone. Did you suffer a bit from being alone?
Yes. I mean, it was part of it. I knew it was going to happen. I think I've learned this more advanced. Like now, you can't, if you go into a country or whatever, and you need to go full on with work, you meet very cool people, but they can't be your only circles. Like work can't be your life. So there was a lonely element, definitely. It takes time.
Did you have any particular strategies to kind of overcome the fact that you were there on your own?
Not particular, like strategies.
Mm.
You just kind of improvise. It's not that I was completely alone. There were a lot of people there I was meeting. So sometimes you have to accept that there are not going to be plans this weekend, and you just walk around.
If someone asked you, imagine a person that is going to a new country on their own. What advice would you give them? Like, in terms of like, hey man, you need to, or hey person, you need to do this, or like make sure you some tips or suggestions to this person that is going to a new country alone.
I think, which is one part of the reason why I'm going to Colombia next year, although there are a lot of other reasons. I think the co-living structure works very well.
Could you expand on that?
See, It basically means that you live in an apartment with other people and you have your own room, but then there are other social things. And what I mean about that, because that's quite specific, I think you need, I should probably strategize much more. I think I haven't been strategizing much about this, but you need like your systems of when you're going to meet people. But when you're not living in one place, everyone has their own things. So
Yeah.
there's a bit too much disconnection with the people you meet. But yeah, I still haven't got that figured out much.
Yeah, well, but one thing about both Carlos and Greg is that you were coming home, which is something that you both achieved, to come home to Spain. So you changed country and that had its challenges. But in your case, Jimmy, you were launching into unknown territory, which was more challenging, I think, in some ways. But let's cut to, you did it. You got a job.
Yeah, I think because that was the main objective, that was done. And the other side, like the social side, was definitely left to a side. And it is true that the social part also became part of the goal of attaining the job, because you need money coming in, or if not, stress starts to
Like
get.
you're heading home.
Yes.
But in a different way from these two.
I was pretty close, yes.
So hang on, let's just think. So when did you get the job and you start working at the stablecoin company?
It was in June. And I got a very important half job, which was representing a very big newsletter community of fintech as the ambassador of Argentina. And the eyes open, looking for opportunities thing comes because this was a company that wasn't expanded into Argentina. They were doing events in all other countries of LatAm. So that was an opportunity. And that came from a post of LinkedIn, just a little repost. And I was like, oh, this company reposted. I looked into the company, saw that, became the ambassador, and that gave me a name. It was just each step gets you to the next one. And the event that I did, that one of the sponsors was my current company. So it got me very close to them.
So it took you about 4.5 months to actually get that job.
Yeah.
And now your title now is?
Sales director of LatAm.
Sales director for LatAm. Nice. And very quickly, you've also visited quite a few other countries in LatAm with this job since you started in June. Which other countries have you been to?
Uruguay, Bolivia, Brazil, Mexico, Paraguay, Argentina, of course, Chile.
You made it to the US as well, no?
Yeah, US. That was just before.
So back to the free lunch. The on the one hand, you have traveled to all these Latin American countries. You've got yourself a job as a salesperson. You are getting a salary every single month and a commission if you do well and all that kind of thing that comes to the territory. But you had to go and you had to be on your own and launch yourself into that unknown world. And now you've got to deliver against the job.
Yeah.
So, but before we go there, any other questions for Jimmy? Because I've got one before we go any further on what it's like to be a salesperson in Latin America.
Well, I have a million questions for Jimmy.
I'll ask mine.
Go.
What is a stable coin?
The key question. So, without going technical, because it doesn't make sense to go technical, the question is, what is a massive problem in the world, in the financial world? Is that to send money in Spain to another person, or from US to, I don't know, Europe or whatever, it works pretty well because the structure is well built, the financial system. To send money from Brazil to Nigeria, one has, I don't know, like 200 something million people living there. I think Nigeria has 120 something like that. A lot of people. It's a chaos. Like one money has to go to one bank, then has to go to another one. The Nigerian system has to process it. It has to change into the naira. Anyway, that structure, the whole emerging world, works very badly, the financial system. So crypto is this wild industry where if you look at it from the outside, it's meme coins, Ethereum, Bitcoin, up and down, people losing money. Anyway, but what's happening under the hood? It's money that moves instantly wherever in the world, because the blockchain is a global, it doesn't do borders. So if I can send someone in Brazil crypto, which is up and down, and I can't pay anything with that, right? If I can send them money or that instantly, why don't we use that technology? But instead of investment speculation up and down, why don't we move real money with it, or fiat money? So if there is real dollars, a company has real dollars in store, then you can create a crypto version of the dollar and move that instantly, and the whole merging world becomes able to trade between each other and store in dollars as well, because access to dollars in a country that loses 90% of its value of the currency in 5 years, it's actually very valuable.
So the money goes from Argentina, let's say, in crypto to Nigeria instantly, where it gets converted back into the Nigerian money or into dollars, but the transfer takes place in the crypto.
It's called a stablecoin sandwich. You're in Argentina, you have a peso, you pass the peso to a stablecoin, and there are companies that do that. They're called on-off ramps. And then you do click, and someone in Nigeria does the off ramp and has a way to pass it onto the Nigerian naira.
Brilliant.
And it goes from 3 days process to minutes. And there are a lot of problems there, as in it's not like solved, there are a lot of things, but if you look at it in the long run, it's definitely a very valuable.
Is that speed the reason it's faster? Is it because less regulation, better technology, a combination of both, or?
See, it's the technology of the blockchain, because essentially the problem with sending normal money is that everyone has to be, the money itself is not digital. So that's the thing. When you pass money from Brazil into Nigeria, everyone has to communicate with each other to make sure that everyone agrees that the money has passed. But in truth, that money is still in Brazil, and the money that is received in Nigeria was always in Nigeria. ¿Sabes? There is no real coin that has moved. Actually, the founder of Ripple, which is one of these big ones, says that to this day, the fastest way to move a physical dollar from US to Africa is going on a plane.
All right. So your job is now to find companies that would be interested in this technology if they have international transfers as part of their business model. Okay, fantastic. Well, we're going to come back, I think, and ask you some more questions about what it's like to do that, because now we've kind of reached a moment where we've established where everybody is. So Greg, you've made it back to Spain, you set up a company. Carlos, you've made it back to Spain, you're now a brand manager, which means that you've kind of significantly enhanced your responsibilities, and you're doing something definitely more challenging, that you were different anyway from what you were doing before. And Jimmy, you are now in Latin America, moving around, and you have a job, you're working for a company. So by mid-late this last year, all of you have achieved this. So I think I'd like to go on to, all right, you got what you wanted, but now you've got to do it. So why don't we start with Carlos? When you think about starting that new role, what were the really big challenges that you felt?
It was interesting because in Crispy, we were a very small team. Now we're at 20 in the office, but when I joined, there was like 12, 13 of us. So we had a really cool challenge, actually, which is we have a massive global brand with, as I said, tons of years of history, very established in certain countries, but as a startup. So we were basically a startup, you know. So coming from quite a established and structured company that was before the agency with a lot of systems and different procedures, etc., to a company that was, you know, a bit chaotic because everything was all over the place and there was so much stuff to do and there was very few of us. So it's, you know, completely normal. So I think it was also bringing a bit of order and having to create my own order that before was established, having to make it my own. And that was definitely a challenge, but I think we're in a really good place. You know, we managed to open and everything went really well. So that's testament to the team, and you know, the operations of those companies is extremely complicated, and the team is truly amazing. They managed to do it.
And you've also taken on some new things you hadn't really done before, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, PR.
Yeah. So I think before I was in the world of advertising. Now I'm in the world of marketing. So marketing not only includes advertising, includes a bunch of other stuff. So before we were in a bigger team, you could rely on other people to help you when you didn't know how to do something or if you had less expertise. Now there's less of us and there's much more things to do. Now I've realized, you know, we're in a meeting, it's like, oh, that's a great idea, let's do it. Then when I'm at the meeting, it's like, okay, now I actually need to do this. I have no idea how I'm going to do it, but I need to figure out how to do this, because if I don't do it, no one's going to do it. And that's quite a big challenge. And it's really good because I've learned so much of random stuff that I've never done before, and really fulfilling work as well. So I think that's also quite the biggest change from agency side to client side in a small company is you're going to have to do it yourself. So also, you know, you need to be cautious with things you commit to, because if you're, you know, you can say, yeah, I'll do that. But then you're like, oh, it's actually a lot more.
I remember, Carlos, sometimes like dealing with the brand, the psychological part of marketing or whatever, like massive project. And then another moment, returning home from the paper shop with things that you had to stick. You
know, we have to get some carapas, some you know, things to cover the shade. It's like, well, I have to go to Costco and buy it myself, or go to the shop that sells stuff for, you know, advertising stuff, or like, you know, selling merchandising. I have to figure out how to expose it all, and you know, it's the little things
working in and on the business both. Yeah.
But it's very cool because when you see the actual result, it's tangible, it's there, and you see people going to the shop and enjoying and having a good time. It's very fulfilling. It's definitely worth it.
Yeah, it's a very good point you make about moving from a bigger organization where kind of, I used to call this the orange envelope effect, that you would put your expenses into an orange envelope and 2 days later the money would come back from them and you wouldn't even know who did it when you work for a big company. But when you work for a small company, you've got to do it yourself.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you've also had to learn to delegate because you have a team.
Yeah.
And so on top of all that doing yourself, you've also been through a process of learning to lead.
Yeah. So I'm now a manager of one person. She's our director. I'm very lucky because she's truly great. She's, you know, we managed to build a very strong and powerful relationship, and she's very good at what she does. So she makes my life very easy. I'm very lucky. But I've definitely had to, you know, actually genuinely had to take quite a few of your lessons from your book about empathy and how to, you know, be a good manager and a good leader to your team is extremely important. And yeah, it's been very interesting. We're growing. We're on the process of hiring one more person for the team. So that's going to be very interesting because for now it's been, you know, it hasn't been really challenging in the sense of, you know, I have a very difficult person because the person that works with me is great. But we'll see in the future with more people that come into the team, there will be, you know, new challenges arise, and every person is different. So I will have to adapt my way of managing them and leading them.
Excellent. Well, I do believe we make our own luck, by the way. So
yeah, fair enough. I mean, obviously we're doing the interview process. So as I said before, it's everything is, you know, it's such an important step. And when you're about to decide, you're like, oh, are we doing the right decision with this person or not? You want to make sure that it's the right person and it's challenging. So that also comes with its own leadership and management as well.
Fantastic. Right, well, let's go to Greg. So, Greg, you had your vision to be your own boss, to start up your company, and you did it. And now you've got, I think, a few clients, and you're definitely off on that road. So, what would be for you kind of the big learnings of actually doing the thing that you dreamed of doing?
Big learnings. It's always going to be harder than you think, always. So be ready for that. And then there's been so many learnings.
How do you find the kind of, because there's this thing, working on your business, working in your business, right? So when you're working in your business, you're out there doing creative ideas for clients and but then there's different elements to working on your business. One is like developing it and having time to look for new clients and that kind of stuff. But also there is the part of running it.
Yeah.
How do you find that part?
So that's a great question, because like you mentioned, it's not only delivering for the clients and doing the actual work. You need to also like work in your business in terms of, all right, you need to have a roadmap, you need to have objectives, you need to do all the taxes, you need to, if you hire someone or if you hire a team, you need to do the contracts. Like you need to, I learned everything from scratch. I didn't do this before in my old company. So if someone is starting a business, obviously when you're starting, you need to do these yourself and learn, the basics. But my suggestion is as soon as you can, start delegating and start, hiring people to do this admin jobs, because I completely hate them with all my life. Like I can't bear them. So, but they're part of the process. Yeah.
Well, some of it is self-leadership and a little bit of empathy as well, which is knowing what you're good at. So, and unfortunately, when you're running a small company, these tax things and when you have to hand in certain stuff at what time, they're not flexible, so they have to happen.
Yeah.
So if we don't have somebody who really knows what they're doing to help us, then we can get in trouble.
Yeah. And going back to your question of things I've struggled the most as well, or lessons learned, is that you need to know, like you say, what you're good at and what you're not good at. Just relax and be confident in the people you hire and the people you contract, and that's part of the process. You don't have to be micromanaging everything.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite subjects, control, and whether or not you really control anything except for yourself.
I think it's also interesting that as now a business owner, you need to think of all of the three problems, right? The tame, the wicked, and the critical problems. Before, maybe you didn't have to think of, when you worked in the agency, you didn't have to think of the critical and the wicked problems.
Yeah.
Now you need to do all of that. And now that comes links to delegation. So now you want to focus on those wicked problems. You can delegate the tame issues of that admin and everything that you don't want to do.
Correct. Right. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. So any particular highlight? Was there a moment after you set up your company, you're back in Spain, you're working away, was there any particular moment where you thought to yourself, goodness, I've done it?
Yeah, so there's two, one positive and one negative. I'm going to start with the negative. So the negative is that I remember it was like a Friday night, all my mates went out or something, and it was like 2 a.m. and I was working, and I was like, yo man, like I wanted to do this to have more freedom, like, but I'm working on this, and I haven't seen my girlfriend in 3 days. I've been like stuck in this. What am I doing wrong? Like, and it was a bit, challenging, and thinking that maybe it's not worth it. Maybe I should do a 9 to 5. There's these moments where you think, is this the right choice? But then the positive comes, and like I remember, like I don't know if this is right to say, but like in a 9 to 5 you have your fixed income, and you know what you're gonna earn, and you know what and it has a limit, and you have to work hard for the promotion, and then you're gonna get maybe 5%. And when you have your own business, you only control yourself, and it depends on you what you earn, basically. So last month, I looked at the bank account and I was very happy because it was like, this couldn't be able, like, I wouldn't be able to have this in the bank without sacrificing a lot of stuff and doing the work. So that's the pro. Like, and you know, guys, I don't give a damn about money, but it was like a good feeling of like, hey, maybe this is the right direction. This is the right path, and just keep pushing. And obviously, also another pro is that I can spend weekends with my grandparents. I can spend weekends with my family. Before in England, I spend weekends with Carlos, which I really love. And I still do it in Madrid, so it's a win-win.
We're not living together, but we still
see each other, and sometimes I beat him at paddle. So yeah,
that hasn't happened yet. You will try. Well,
it happened.
Just keep it realistic.
So yeah, and that's being me, like completely honest. So yeah.
Also, I've noticed something from what you just told me, which you said, last month I looked in my bank account. Most people in your position will be looking at their bank account every hour. So it probably is true that you're not very motivated by money, which, by the way, might be a really, really powerful thing in your situation.
Yeah, I mean, luckily I come from a background where basic needs are covered, and it's not something I pursue. I pursue like more the fulfillment and, you know, making sure I do a good job. And if that comes with money, hey, good.
All right, amazing. Let's go back to Jimmy then. So, Jimmy, you've got yourself a job. You're now a salesperson with a whole regional responsibility. You're in the world of stablecoins, which is what you aim to be. So there's a lot of ticks there. You've achieved a lot of things, and now you have to start the job. What was your experience of becoming that salesperson?
Well, there is a lot of like crypto is a technical thing as well. So there's definitely that side of if you're expanding a technology, a very innovative technology into a continent, and more than just presenting with the new tech, you have to explain why it's good, which is, you know, standard sales. But so therefore you have to understand the blockchain and crypto and how it works. So there was a lot of, you know, trying to get into the technicalities of it. But the reality, which was what we were saying before the cameras started, it was so much of just how does selling work? The process of when to start the deal, when the first conversation, what do you need to get out of the first conversation? What do you need to understand? In a similar way, when I was trying to get the job, you're in a sense selling yourself as well. You need to understand what each person needs and so forth. But in this case, it was with a very clear objective, which was selling this product to a person that doesn't have it and needs it, because if not, they're not going to do it. And so it was mostly, it was understanding how selling works and how humans will buy something and when they won't.
So if I've understood what you're saying correctly, even though you're selling a very, very up-to-date and exciting new technology, the stuff that you needed to learn really has been around since, well, at least let's say kind of since the Second World War, of being a salesperson and what does that actually mean. And I guess the kind of people that you're selling to are not funky guys in black turtlenecks. I mean, these are serious business people who have to make a decision whether to invest in this technology or not.
Yeah, I mean, so to give it a bit of structure, I would say the 3 parts would be understanding the tech, because you need to know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And then the key of knowing how to best sell and to best act as a kind of a consultant as well, and know when to balance the two. And then the whole expansion part. Latin America is huge. Each country is very different. Each speaks Spanish, thankfully. Brazil speaks Portuguese and we're working on it. But I'm not, you know, I'm Spanish. And there's also a distance there. So also figuring out where it makes more sense to expand. At first it was movement throughout the whole continent. Now it's going to change a bit more from one country and expand.
I think you said that you're going to base yourself in Bogota, right?
Yes.
Okay, just quickly, what was your reason for that?
Business side, it's where we're expanding the most. Colombia has a huge payments ecosystem. Like the flow of money is very big in Colombia. So we've been growing a lot. And one thing I've learned is everywhere in the world, but specifically in LatAm and I would say in the emerging markets, the business is built by connections and reputation. And a lot of times I start a deal and the guy is like, look, I was introduced by X. And in a way they are saying there is a big chunk that we can leave to one side because that is already sorted. Now explain to me, the specifics. And when you move from one country to another, you don't have those relationships, or you build them, you move and you lose them. And then you go back again and you're like, hey, I'm back. And it's like, yeah, but there's a bit to work on there. So Colombia, there's a snowball effect.
There's also the element of this overall kind of working on the whole person, not just the work, which is, I think you'd also like to be a little bit more stable, right? To be in one place and to hopefully begin to maybe play a bit of football on Saturday and that kind of stuff.
It's the same concept, but brought onto the personal side, without a doubt. Being in one place, getting to meet people, interests that connect you to one place, because different countries get you in different mindsets. So you kind of think, oh, it would be cool I play a lot of football in Argentina. I don't play as much when I'm outside, but that would, it's that kind of thing. But just doubling down on the things on a daily basis.
Love it. All right. So I think actually we've reached a great point in this conversation where we've now heard about each of your stories, and we have the person who wanted to set up a business and move back to Spain. You achieved it. You did it. You now have your business. We have a person who was looking to come back to Spain and find a really interesting, challenging job, and you found one, and it's given you a number of new and exciting things to develop in yourself. And I think that is a very interesting story. And we've also got the person who set off across the world to find a role in a brand new world and brand new industry, and you've done that too. So I'd like to say well done to all of you. Congratulations. I have to say it's really, really impressive to listen to you and to realize what you've achieved. And I hope the people who are listening have gathered a few kind of tidbits of what you've learned along the way, what you've experienced. So why don't we change the focus now? Instead of the look back and what you guys have been doing, why don't we go to the look forward to what's coming? I'd love to talk about, shall we say, what do you see coming for each of you over the next year? Where do you want to be when we sit down in a year from now? And we do the end of 2026 New Year special podcast, and you come back and we talk again about what you've been up to. So any thoughts on what's coming? What's coming for you, Greg?
So hopefully in a year's time, I'll dominate the art of planification and communication way better. And hopefully, I just wish the business keeps going as well as it's going. Hopefully, a bit of an expansion. It's needed. So maybe team of 5 to 10, more or less. Let's see how that goes. But yeah, I'll a lot to learn. It's a rough journey, a good one. If not, it wouldn't be fun. So yeah, that's my plans. I think more or less 5 to 10 people, more or less.
That's cool. That's pretty ambitious. What about you, Carlos?
For me, it would be similar to Greg, expanding the team. As I said, we have another person in the pipeline to join the team. And I really want to nail that part of leadership, because that's something I thoroughly enjoy. I think for the future, I want to make sure that I'm doing it right and setting those right foundations. And then obviously is expanding Krispy in Madrid. We want everyone to know who we are, and expanding to other cities. So those are the two, growing Madrid and arriving in Barcelona is our next objective. And having lived through opening Madrid is a truly spectacular experience. I can't wait to do Barcelona because it's going to be epic.
Yeah.
And having done it before, now I know the details that we need to change. It's going to be more efficient and better. So those are, just nailing Barcelona, or well, possibly other cities, but probably Barcelona, and growing the team and setting a really structured and, reliable team that everyone can come to and say, that marketing team is, strong and a powerful team. These are my two definite objectives.
Great. And what about you, Jimmy?
So, like, three things mainly. The first, business-wise, what I mentioned before, I want this brand to be very relevant in Colombia, and there will be an expansion into the Caribbean and Mexico mainly, and then Argentina. But Colombia, by the end of the year, it will be very relevant. In the personal side, it will be even, let's say Bogota, because that's the one that I will start with the first months, but it will be living in that city and kind of me participating on a consistent, with a consistent routine, let's say. So I have my daily routine, I have the sports, the people I've met, my job is connected also to the country and to the area at least. So there will be much more structure. Right now, it's been chaos, order in the chaos, let's say. And now I'm going to try to find a bit more order in the order.
Like it.
Order without chaos.
The last one, I think, for me personally, like skills, there is a confidence that I have to have on my product and also on myself. Like when I'm in a situation of a deal, let's say negotiation, I know that my product is so good and I have to express that confidence, and when someone maybe something is not working the way that I think, it's like, okay, this is how it can go. If you don't need it, that's fine, but I have to put barriers. I remember I just have to tell this great story which connects Greg, which kind of shows what skills I need to work on and which are good. So when we were running the business of the football leagues in university, needless to say, we had no idea about so many things. And Greg was always like, had all control of the technology, like very different ideas. And I knew about the day-to-day, like who needed to pay, what teams are pending or due or whatever. So I was asking for the payments and I knew exactly who had to pay and when I had to follow up or whatever. And there was a period where, these were uni students and with their own right, they don't have a lot of money. So they're not going to give you the payment they were loving the football, but they didn't want to pay. So I was asking like, guys, come on, you need to pay. Let's figure out when you can pay, let's say at the end of next week. And they were like, oh man, thank you so much. It's really helpful. I'm going to get this new payment in so I can pay you. Yeah, great. And then the end of next week came, no payment. And I'm kind of like, dude, come on, let's work together on this. One day we're in the living room and Greg says, I'm sorry, but we're sending a message to each person, to each captain saying, if you don't pay by tomorrow, you're out of the league. And we had a lot of confidence in our league. Like our league was really cool. And the next day we sent that message. I think that I made it a bit less aggressive. And it was like bing, bang, 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 all the payments coming in. And essentially it's like learning from the people around me and having confidence in the product and saying things like they have to be.
Yeah, I like it. That's a really good story. So I'm just going to try and sum up, because what I'm hearing here is the first part of all your stories has been, I'll take a swimming pool analogy, has been jumping in the pool, right? I mean, that's what you've all set out to do in slightly different ways, but in quite similar ways, which is, okay, I'm standing here on the edge. Where I'm standing now is not bad. It's actually quite good in many ways, but I've got a desire to do something different. So you're going to leap in the pool. And the words that we came up with before were bravery and tenacity, right? So bravery to actually do it and jump in and risk that it might be a bit cold or give you a bit of a fright when you get into it. But and then the tenacity to actually keep going, keep asking questions. In your case, Carlos, keep applying for more and more jobs and not get disheartened and downhearted. In your case, Greg, actually have the guts to leave your comfortable job and to move to a different country and start doing it on your own. In your case, Jimmy, to get on a plane and go to Argentina, a country where you knew precisely nobody, with an ambition to get a job. So that was a pretty exciting and dramatic moment where you all overcame that fear of jumping into the pool. But now that you're in the pool, I'm also hearing a very similar message coming back from you, which is that now it's actually about consolidation, it's about structure, and it's about consistency, which is that now you're in the pool, you've got to swim well. And that the skills you needed for jumping in are a little different from the skills that you need to be a successful swimmer. And it's the classic S-curve that everything goes through, people go through, organizations go through, companies go through, which is the skills you need to get it going are not quite the same skills you need to keep it going. And then there's also the bit at the top of the S-curve, which you're all three very far away from, which is when you need to start genuinely evolving in order not to somehow or other kind of slow down and become less effective. So I think that it's a really fascinating thing. And I think that this is going to be a very, very exciting year for all three of you, because you're going to move into that consolidation mode and you're going to learn new skills and you're going to learn new things. And I generally would like to come back in a year. So as I think you all know, a theme of season 2 of the Free Lunch podcast has been AI. Now we haven't talked about that so far, and I would just like to dedicate a few minutes to that, because I feel as though AI is such a massive influence over everything that's happening. So we've got 3 different sectors. We've got the kind of small business, small company doing AI, doing marketing work for different clients. We've got Krispy Kreme donuts setting out into the world. Obviously, it's not an AI product; you eat it. But there's, as you mentioned, influencers, and that very stuff going digital. And then here we have a cutting-edge, crypto-based stablecoins company. So I'd just like each of you to give us some thoughts on AI, and maybe you might interact with each other and have some thoughts on it. So let's start with Carlos. What do you think is going to happen with AI, specifically in your area, but also in general? What's your view? And if you remember, I think you all know this, the question is, AI friend or foe?
Yeah. I think AI is a bit of both. For me, from my personal experience, it's been beneficial, definitely. I found efficiencies, skills that I've lacked have helped me bridge that gap to be able to fulfill them. There's certain aspects of my work that I wouldn't have experience in, and I've saved so much time thanks to using AI tools. And I think, there's definitely a big education piece on learning how to actually use AI in the most efficient way. But I definitely think that for people like in our kind of situation, it's definitely very beneficial. I think not so much centered around business, but I think there are quite a few social elements which can be challenging for AI, which is, some people are struggling with, they're in a loop of negativity, and they can start using AI as, replacing social interactions sometimes, And I think that's definitely a challenge. I don't think it's that prevalent yet, but I'm scared of what it can lead to in the future for people socially. But in terms of a work environment, definitely very beneficial.
Okay.
And well, for me in Krispy, for example, it helped me a lot with creativity, with copywriting, all this kind of stuff. It saves me a lot of time. And obviously, I ask it to create ideas for messages, and 95% of them are terrible, but a few of them are actually quite decent, and you give them a little tweak and it saves you so much time. They just have to think of them yourself. So I think it definitely has a lot of benefits.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, let's go to Jimmy. What do you think about AI in your world?
So it's not new, but it is what I'm most interested within AI is definitely the education part, learning through AI, but definitely the same way that you can ask AI to give you a summary or whatever, and it's kind of giving you knowledge so you can read it, let's say. But for me, it's mostly how AI can make you uncomfortable enough to learn truly, like owning the knowledge. The difference between asking it for a summary versus asking it for 3 questions about the article that you just read. And when you start to structure that learning, then in terms of my daily job, I have to start using it more in terms of the processes. Right now, I have a bit of, I haven't been like using it with a lot of structure and strategy, but as a company, we use it a lot. And it's mostly like data sets of companies or whatever, and that's great. But there is also a part where, as a salesperson, sometimes there is certain interactions that we try to automate through AI as if I was talking, and I like that less and less. At first, it works well sometimes. Like when you go into a conference, there's so like really skilled people in my team that have like, and there's just, hey, I would love to know what you're thinking about ahead of the conference, like something specific. You send that to 300 people, and there's a lot of value there. But then sometimes other strategies are more like trying to mimic a certain catch-up message, like, hey, how has this been going on? And I'm finding that does not work, or at least we have to be very careful with that, because if I'm trying to build my own reputation profile, there is no possibility that person can see that I am an AI. Like it's kind of like a zero failure situation. It's similar to medicine, let's say. Like if of course, not comparing sales to medicine in terms of importance, but if we're going to use AI as a company to reach to prospects and try to get the sales directors to interact with and get more deals, great. But at no moment can that person think that it's a robot, because if not, it's done.
And I think coming back to your first point, I think it's interesting and worth mentioning how you, for example, created your own tool to learn Portuguese in ChatGPT.
Yes. Thank you.
So because it's
language learning is, but it also goes back, which is really interesting, to the personal thing, like the replacing social, because you always say the best way to learn a language is to go to the country, it's to get a teacher or have friends, have a girlfriend of that country or whatever, and definitely. But it is true that the fastest way is to speak to an AI that talks to you in the language. And it is true, there is an app that builds on top of the WhatsApp, and you chat with this AI on WhatsApp. But it is true, like bigger picture, if an alien comes and he sees a person chatting to an AI just to learn a language, in certain situations, like 100 years from now, I'm sure that those things will create a lot of psychological issues. For now, we're good. Like if the objective is to talk to humans, great. But There is.
So what you're saying is that if we are using AI to help us to be better at chatting to other humans or selling donuts, then that is something positive. But if the end goal becomes to spend our day chatting to an AI, I'm not quite sure what the application is with Krispies, it would become a little.
I don't think it's an end goal. I think it's simply for like succumbing to each person's nature of interacting with another social being. And I don't mind to admit, like when I'm chatting with this Brazilian AI and it's helping me learn, it's like if this was a real robot, he would, I would I would not insult him or whatever, because he's helping me learn Portuguese. He's a nice dude. So so yeah, there will be it. So it will be subconscious, I think.
What do you think, friend or foe?
A friend. Quite literally, like if this was a robot, he would be my friend.
Nice. Greg?
So, AI, I see it as it's a technology, right? And it's happened in history where new technology, comes, like, weapons, the internet, nuclear bombs, and it all comes down to how you use that technology, right? And the education, like, I think AI potential is literally unlimited and very scary in terms of what it's going to be able to do in the future, in the coming years. We can talk later about singularity, but that's another discussion, another topic. But it all depends on how the person uses the AI. And now, speaking about AI professionally and like how I use it, my business wouldn't be able to operate with AI.
Without AI.
Without, it would be literally impossible. Going back to my expansion of, I want to expand the team. I think right now the AI systems I have in place, the AI agents I have for a lot of stuff, it's probably equivalent to like 5 to 10, like, workers at least. I have everything automated. I have everything like well designed. I come from an engineering background, so I've been always very techy, and I love all these stuff. But it's very scary, and it's a lot of people think that it's gonna replace jobs. It probably will. But it's how you use the AI. So what I mean with it is, like, for example, when I design webs or build webs, if a person that has no knowledge in building webs starts using an AI like I do, that person is not gonna build a website, because you need a lot of background. You need to understand the basic concepts. You need to understand how communication works. You need that education first to know how to use AI. So, and going back to other podcasts with you, Eddie, I think universities and schools need to, update the way they teach, because now you don't have to memorize things. You don't have to memorize topics. You need to understand how they work so that you can use tools like the internet, like AI, to build stuff. So yeah, I mean, my business wouldn't be able to operate without AI. It would be impossible.
So friend for your business.
Friend with a distance, because if I thinking about building a family, for example, if I have kids in the future, I'm gonna be very strict in the way they interact with the AI and how they use it. I'm pro technology. I'm pro using AI, but you need to know how to use the AI. It's about how you use the AI. So yeah.
Okay. So I think basically friend with a little bit of caution, but looking out for dangerous faux elements. All right. So I think we've had a fantastic conversation. I've really, really enjoyed listening about your different journeys, which for me has been fascinating because they're all different and yet they're all similar in certain ways. You've all jumped into that pool and started to swim in your slightly different directions, but I think there's a lot of similarity in the things that you have experienced and learned, but I think there's also some important differences. So I'd like to end our conversation by asking each one of you just one comment that you would make to somebody listening to this, perhaps somebody who might be thinking of doing something similar to what you've done, somebody perhaps taking on a promotion in your case, Carlos, someone thinking about setting up on their own, Greg, somebody maybe thinking about taking the leap of moving to a different country, trying for a completely different new type of job, Jimmy. So just one final word that you would say to that person who'd come to you for advice in the way that you were talking about before. I'll start with you, Greg.
Cool. So to the Greg of a year ago, I would say, or to a person in the similar situation of a Greg a year ago, I would say to just take the risk, like work hard for it, and that everything's going to be all right. Like just believe in yourself and like put the work in and take the risk. Without risk, there's no reward. So that's it.
Okay.
You stole my phrase. It's it's in essence is the same as trust the process.
Yeah, trust.
And trust yourself. But you can't trust yourself if like you just don't do anything. What I mean is it will require you to put in the hours and have sacrifices and work for it in order to achieve what you want.
Mm-hmm.
But, trust, but work for it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And Jimmy?
I will apply it to my situation. Let's say someone who says that I'm thinking of traveling around Asia, let's say. I will say what you were saying before about the balance. For a period, do balance, but with strong oscillations. But be very careful with oscillating a bit too much. Because just make sure that there is a balance at the end, or that you're slightly reducing the oscillations. Because it is true, like part of the Argentina move, also subconsciously or consciously, was also the connection to Spain. And that also is involved with the fact that, you both, some of the closest people in my life, my family, my best friends are here. And sometimes when I was there in Asia, there were moments that you're kind of a bit, I was going to say high, but I don't want you to interpret this. You kind of think that, you can go out there and there will be an adventure constantly, whereas there has to be a balance in the oscillations. So take the risk,
But have a plan.
but have a slight plan of that you are gonna assume that there's gonna be a correction in the market. If you start to go up and everything is like intense, great. But just assume that there's going to be a correction and you're just going to have to figure it out.
So I feel like another analogy coming on, and you all know me well enough to know that I love my analogies. I feel like it's a train analogy, which is if you don't get on the train, that you ain't going anywhere different. And if you like where you are and you like the platform you're standing on, you don't need to get on the train. Nobody's going to make you get on the train except for your own decision to get on it. But if you don't get on it, you won't go anywhere. And if you do get on it, you're going to go somewhere, right? And then once you're on the train, and here's Carlos's point, you've got to shovel in coal. Well, it's an old-fashioned train.
Yeah.
It isn't
Not an AI-powered train. But yeah.
so that it's going to carry us somewhere, and that we are actually very involved in making sure that it gets there by shoveling in the coal and doing whatever you need to do on the train to make sure that it actually works. And then there's a third element, which is it's going somewhere. And I think that's your point, Jimmy, which is that when you're traveling around Asia, it's not just about what you're doing every day, it's also about where you're going. And that there's got to be a plan for after that, because the danger of just being a traveler is that suddenly you realize you're not traveling to anything, right? Yes. And so I think it's not a bad analogy in terms of the situation, because I think all of you have jumped on a train, all of you have been shoveling in coal, and all of you have got a pretty good idea of where the train's going. Part of the fun is we're not 100% sure where it's going, but you've definitely kept that in mind. I think if you take any of those elements out, the train doesn't really work. Gentlemen, shall we draw it to a close there?
It's been
Yeah, congratulations, and I'm so excited for the year that's ahead.
Okay,
The-
thank you. All right.